Vilcabamba Ecuador.
It's mutual.
ありがとう。
どういたしまして、本当のことですよ。
Japanese is one of the many languages you're mastering.
No, I'm not a master, but I'm learning. I'm learning.
And I'm so happy to be able to share with our viewers today your perspective on life. I have read your books. They are remarkably transforming. And what most impacted me is that you wrote that at the age of 25,
26 actually. It
26?
started my first book.
You decided to retire, to only live your passion and purpose. And I kind of sense that, especially in these times, that is what many people are seeking, maybe even seeking without knowing. So I would like to know, was there any pivotal moment, any revelation, any special event that made you take that decision and take it to made you into the visionary leader you are today?
Yeah, there was a pivotal moment. There have been many pivotal moments in my life when, it's kind of going troop troop, you're going along, and because I wanted to live, understand how the poor people lived in my country. And I came home and I noticed I was feeling really antsy and just like uncomfortable. And I didn't like feeling like that, and I wasn't used to feeling like that. I usually feel really good. So I sat down in a big overstuffed chair in my living room, and I did what I call go infinite and ask for help, which is, I had learned to do that when I was a little child. And I learned that I could get answers by asking questions. So I said, okay, God, I don't like feeling like this, and I'm staying in this chair until I understand why I feel like this. And I just sat there and I just hung out in infinite. And about 10, 15, I don't know, it's hard to gauge because it's beyond time, all of a sudden I knew why I was feeling like that. And I realized I was getting addicted to the steady paycheck. And I realized then that if I got addicted to the steady paycheck, I might forget who I am and what I came to this earth to do. So this was 1970. And so then the next thought I had was, oh my, I've got to quit my job. Then the next thought was, no, I've got to retire and only do what makes absolute sense to me for the rest of my life, because that'll be the way I'll find my purpose and what I'm here to do. So the next day, there was a little more to it than that. Then the next thought was, but you'll starve. And then it was, well, wait a minute, no, I won't starve. I can do work. I just don't have to have a steady paycheck. I can walk dogs, I can translate languages, and I can type. I mean, I could do all kinds of things, So the next day I went in and I told my boss I was retiring. And he looked at me as if I'd completely gone crazy, because I looked about 15 at the time, and he said, "You're what?" And I explained that I was getting addicted to the steady paycheck and that I was going to retire and only do what made absolute sense to me for the rest of my life. And he almost cried. And I realized that he recognized what I was talking about. So that was it. It was, and within a year, I got the opportunity to go to Japan. And I really wanted to go to China. I wanted to see what was happening in China. But when I got over to Japan, I was so shocked by the pollution, I ended up staying. And that was when I worked with the environmental movement in Japan for 4 years and wrote my first book, which is called Island of Dreams. And that was a holistic study of the Japanese environmental crisis and what it means for humanity. What I saw back then was Japan was like the canary that coal miners used to take down into the mines to test for the presence of poisonous gases. If the canary died, the miners knew that it was not a good idea for them to go down there, because the canary was small and fragile. And Japan was like the canary for the whole world, because Japan was a small nation and very fragile, very dependent on outside resources. And the longer I was in Japan, the more I realized that the United States were being visited by a butterfly. I realized that the United States was where a whole way of thinking was emerging and going out and changing the world in a very materialistic direction, but also some very good things, because the United States had a sort of a freer way of thinking. So I decided it was time to come home. And I woke up one morning and I had this very clear thought, I'm going to walk and bicycle across the United States. So I mentioned it to a couple of friends. I mean, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. It was probably a good thing because I probably might not have done it if I had a clue of what it was really about. So I told some friends and they said, oh, can I come too? Can I come too? So I said, sure, we'll make it a group thing. What the heck? And they ended up not coming, but by then it was now a group thing and a whole bunch of people did come. And we had about a dozen people who spent 9 months bicycling about 5,000 miles in a zigzag route across the United States. And I did that because I felt like Rip Van Winkle, which is an American character in a book back written in the 1700s or early 1800s. And Rip Van Winkle woke up after 20 years and the world had completely changed around him. And when I came back from Japan, it felt as if the whole United States had really changed, because things were changing much more rapidly now than back in the time that Rip Van Winkle was written. So I spent that whole year interviewing people all across the United States about their hopes and fears for the future. The book only came out in Japanese, and I'm now working on translating it, or actually not translating, but typing up the manuscript to put out on the internet in English, because it's really quite an interesting book. And it's over 30 years now since we did the trip, and it's been interesting doing it while we've been working on the Garden of Paradise project, because there's so many parallels, and I also can see that I've learned a lot and grown a lot since I was, 30, 31 and young and stupid. Now I'm old and stupid, but anyway, I have learned a few things since we did that project. I'm much more positive now. I think I can see that my whole way of thinking is I have much more control over my thoughts, much more control in terms of when I have a negative thought come up, I can just kind of take a deep breath and see that the way I'm holding it is a very limited way, and that I see now so clearly that we have so many people in the world who really know we've come to the end of an old set of roads, and there's help all over the world, and people are waking up very rapidly. And it was very different 35 years ago. Actually more than that, when I first I call it jumped out off the cliff when I retired. It was very different because it was such a strange thing for someone to do. And now I think a lot of people are waking up and realizing that life is short. We each have a job to do, so let's get busy with it. Might be useful to insert a clip from the Estonia video that I showed you, because I think that's very inspiring to show that when people wake up and start to come together around a common purpose, things can move very quickly. So.
We live on a beautiful planet, but we are trashing it day by day. Waste is everywhere. Beaches, cities, forests, even in oceans. In Europe, there is a small country called Estonia. Over half of its territory is covered with pristine forests. However, the forests were decorated with household and construction waste. Many people believed it is acceptable to bring their garbage to the forest, and they had been doing that for years. But there was a group of people who believed that all this could be changed.
Teeme ära sündis niimoodi, et kõigepealt tuli minul.
First step was to create a team with the best professionals in Estonia. A grassroots initiative was launched. In a few weeks, there was a team of 20 volunteers, which eventually grew to 620 people.
Inimesed, keda me projekti kaasasime, olid oma ala tõelised professionaalid. Ja nad tegid seda sellepärast, et see oli neile oluline.
The second step was to get the people, organizations, communities to gather enough support for the idea and find reliable partners. Initiators realized from the start, the media, even the president, gathering eventually more than 500 official partners.
Iga firma panustas siis vastavalt sellele, mis ressursid tal olid, et kes tuli meile appi oma töötajatega, kes andis meile oma töövahendeid, prügiautosid, kes andis meile oma reklaamipindu.
Meile öeldi, et projekti lõpufaasis olime me nagu maffia. Keegi ei saanud meile ära öelda.
Ja pilt, mida inimene samal ajal tegi, kõik toimus reaalajas. Väga lõbus oli kaardistamise nädalavahetusel istuda.
Ma loodan, et meie lugu teid inspireerib. Ja ma usun siiralt, et seda projekti saab teha ka teie kodumaal. See ei maksa palju ja see on kõigest üks päev.
Let's do it!